start thinking about your needs in your community, how many of you have too many? How many of you have worked on a budget and dickered over whether your office supplies line item should have $250 or $350? I know you're in the room. How many of you have been creating a budget based on this is the way it's always been done?
So the purpose of this presentation is to introduce you to the concept of priority-based budgeting. We believe that it is a different, more strategic way to fund what matters. And believe us, we intend to put the fun in funding.
We're going to have an accounting class too. Really fun. The tools we're going to share with you, we have been used in large and small municipalities across the U.S. We started developing this when for a county that we worked in, and now we're using it with many of our clients.
Three basic things we're going to talk about today. We will start out by talking about results-based accountability, RBA. Just a couple more acronyms to fill out your government acronym bank, right? So RBA. Second of all, SAP, Strategic Action Planning. Third, priority-based budgeting, PBB. And we hope that you leave here with some actionable tools to implement your own PBB, or at least a PB-inspired budget. And we're gonna walk through this handout in order to send you home with something that you can actually use and implement.
I believe that PBB will inspire you to redefine how you do budgeting in your community, and it'll give you a lot more holistic approach rather than being department by department, and it's really going to take your community values into consideration.
So Lisa's really humble and would probably not want to introduce herself, so I'm going to introduce her for you. I'm going to introduce you to her on her behalf. So she comes to us with 20 years of experience as an accountant at a PCA or at a firm, and she specifically focused on fund accounting. And then after that, she went on to be a borough manager for about a decade, and then I picked her up when I was a county commissioner. I picked her up as my county administrator. And she's now been with the company for a couple of years, and so if you add all that up, that's 35 years of relevant work to you that somehow she did before she was 29.
And Ben loves to introduce himself, but I'm going to do it for him today. Ben founded Kafferlin Strategies in 2013, but prior to that, he had been working in politics and local government since he was about 15 years old. So he has a real bent towards helping community. He was county commissioner in Warren County for 8 years, where we worked together. And while he was there, he pushed for performance-based budgeting, and he is currently studying for his MPA right now in performance management. Ben has a real knack for putting people together with resources to get to solutions, and that's one of the reasons we've been able to grow a really cool team and a really cool company. Right now, we'd like to take a minute to just thank PAMA for having us and for really creating all this value for your membership. It's really cool that we could be here with you.
By the way, one of the things I forgot to mention about Lisa is that she did an ICMA class certification earlier this year on priority-based budgeting. As far as I know, there's no one else in Pennsylvania that's got that certification. And so that's one of the services that we are now offering, is helping communities with their priority-based budgeting. So if you stopped by our table when we were a vendor the other day, you probably noticed that there's two sides of our house. The first side is the Kafferlin Strategies Management Consulting firm. We now solely help small local governments in Pennsylvania with their management needs. That could look like capital improvement planning, priority-based budgeting, interim management, management search, and a host of other management kind of related services.
On the other hand, CivilLink is our software firm where we're digitally transforming local government operations. And between the two companies, we've built a really cool team that works all across the state.
All right, a couple of quick legal kind of First of all, you're totally going to be expecting this one. I'm not your solicitor, and so consult with your solicitor. We're also not CPAs, and though we think we're giving you really good counsel, and we believe we've asked our attorneys, we've asked our accountants, still fair warning, you should run all this by yours, right? Also, I just want to warn you that we think this is a really transformative way of budgeting. That does not mean that it's easy. It certainly doesn't mean that it's not time consuming. It is. I think it's just an investment that's well worth it. There's also no silver bullets. You have, if you're in charge of a local government, you know that you have limited resources, there's no silver bullets, and you have to prioritize and make hard choices. Lastly, I just wanted to mention that we would love this to be interactive. So if you have a question and we're not clear about something or whatever, throw your hand up. We would probably like to answer it then and there.
All of you are probably familiar with traditional budgeting, where we focus on what we spend rather than what we want to achieve. We have siloed departments. Every department is each man for himself. And sometimes that lacks clear priorities, and we have a difficult time developing the value of that to the citizens. Of course, they want their potholes filled, but they don't always see the other work, all the underground stuff that has to happen, so it's not always easy to communicate. We also struggle with that way we've always done it mentality, and so some of our disconnect is we're spending money, but we're not actually achieving community goals and then solving real relevant problems. Sorry.
No problem. All right. Have you guys had an elected official that came into office saying something along the lines of, I'm going to run this place like a business? Yeah. As I already confessed, I am a recovering elected official. I kind of came into office throwing around the same kind of thing. I knew better. Like, I knew that local government was not a business. I probably use the phrase now and then, for some cheap political points. But the fact is, as you all know, local government is not like a business, and it cannot be run like a business. In fact, it's almost more like a holding company, if you would. You think of a holding company that buys a bunch of businesses that are maybe related, maybe not. And local government's a lot like that. And then you've got these departments, they might interact some, but on the whole, the programs that you're providing are really distinctly different. And we're going to get into why that creates a real issue when you're trying to determine where your money goes, because unlike a holding company that can say, well, I'm going to invest in whatever company is going to yield me the most profit, you can't do that in local government, right? It's going to be equally hard to determine whether the cop needs the new cruiser or the need a new dozer in public works, right? But when I was in office, I helped craft at least 6 of the 8 budgets, and she came along and I didn't really feel like I needed to micromanage things anymore. But there were these frustrating things that happened every time, every year. The first was we had people that dickered over every single little line item in the budget. And that's where that, well, this could go down $50. I just saved $50. Ooh, whoop-de-doo. And completely miss, the forest for the trees. Another was that my department heads could never get good numbers. And I've come to realize that it's just because they can't see very far in advance. It's not that they're bad people or they're bad budgeters or whatever. We're trying to make people that are not long-term thinkers think long-term, and it's just not going to work. And so it invariably, come February, oh yeah, sorry, I didn't mention that this 20-year-old cop car is going to die. Now I need a new one. It's February. Couldn't have told me that back in October, November, December. And then the other thing is we would favor plant, property, and equipment over investing in people. And one of our contentions is that the balance sheet doesn't show people. It shows your depreciable assets, right? Or your cash assets, your liabilities and such. And I think what we're trying to say in part is that people kind of belong on there. And investing in them and their contributions are just as important, if not more important, than the plant, property, and equipment that you're going to be budgeting for. And lastly, every single time we went to budget, someone would come with a creative idea that would invariably get shot down because well, inertia, I guess. For instance, the jail, when I was commissioner, came to me with this really creative recidivism program that was going to get people in job placement and whatever. I loved the idea, and it looked like if we invested a couple $100,000 in 1 year, it would yield like several million over the coming 6, based on national studies and such. But I couldn't get anyone else to get off center on it because, well, the way it's always been done, change is hard, that's a half-baked idea, blah, 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 blah. And so, these were the things that frustrated me about the way that we did budgeting in the past. Sorry. Everyone realizes this, and many theorists have come up with these ideas of how you can improve on the budgeting process so that it's a little bit more performance-based. And so you'll see performance-based budgeting, for instance, or program-related budgeting, where you just give an allocation to a program and say, we don't really care how you spend it as long as you meet some metrics. I think, by the way, those two are really good things. They're really cool. You've probably heard a lot about zero-based budgeting, which most government officials are like, I have to justify everything every year. That's not practical, and it doesn't happen. Or participatory budgeting, where you let the community weigh in on why they want a dog park or something, rather than funding critical services. Or activity-based, like there's all these different kinds of something hyphenated based budgeting. And I guess we're here to say that we believe priority-based budgeting takes a lot of the virtues of those things and combines it into one, and it makes what I think is a superior version of budgeting. It doesn't do away with the other types of budgeting though. You still have to do your line item budget, at least to create an estimate. You still have to do capital budgeting on an annual basis in order to figure out where you're spending money. And if no other reason, the state law forces you to have a balanced budget every year, right? Like, unless you're running everything through a municipal authority or something, you're just kind of stuck with that. And of course, you need a cash flow budget to know when you're spending that money. But what we're saying, I suppose, is that though it's not replacing those, augmenting it with a priority-based budget can go a long way in making sure you're spending the money where it belongs. Is it just another fad? I don't really know. It's been around for about 20 years. I think Boulder, Colorado was the first community that was of note that kind of did priority-based budgeting. As recently as a couple of years ago, Pittsburgh started doing it. We've heard of other communities in Pennsylvania that are smaller that are doing it. So is it a fad? I don't know, but this is what I would say. Fundamentally, it's trying to direct money towards the most important program. How can that go wrong? So is it a fad that in a few years there'll be something hyphenated budgeting? Yeah, maybe. But hopefully it's all driving us towards this new place where we're actually being intentional and strategic about where we're spending our dollars.
To set the stage, we're going to have a brief introduction to results-based accountability, strategic planning, and then we're going to talk about how that flows into priority-based budgeting. On their own, these three things are really powerful, but when you put them all together, it gives you a really powerful approach to programming and how you're going to spend for those optimal outputs that you're looking for in your community. I love this quote. If you don't know where you're going, you'll probably end up somewhere else. And in government, that somewhere else is over budget. I know a lot of you probably are not over budget because you don't allow it to happen, but results-based accountability is a really good framework for local government to move beyond good intentions and then demonstrate real measures for your community. It takes you to look at the end goal and then apply your resources and the strategy needed on the front side to get to that end goal. It will take you from talking about programs to start talking about results that you want to achieve. Because a lot of times we bring up this thing that we think might be a good idea, but we have no data to go with it or to back it up. So we really want to know what activity or program or service is going to be the most impactful. If I ask you, how are you doing? What would you say? I think you would say, we are within budget. Or you would say, we completed that project on time, and maybe under budget as well. You would say we have an outstanding team, You might say we're struggling with X, Y, and Z. And every day we are approving invoices, reviewing our financials, putting forth initiatives, and moving the needle towards sound financial decisions. But are we asking, is anyone better off? Are things actually better because we paid that invoice and we review these financials? To take that a little bit deeper, we're going to ask ourselves these 5 questions. How are we doing? And we're going to ask the question and find the data that backs it up. And we're going to talk to our community. We're going to find out what the story is behind the curve of a program or a service or activity by saying, what's the historical reason that we do this? Who brought this to the table? Is it still working for us? Do we have the data to back it up? Another really important question is, who are our partners? Because there's lots of organizations in our community, and we want to make sure that we're not all doing the same thing, or that we can fill each other's gaps so we can give the community the best results. And then we want to see what works. So I don't know how many of you do this, but we go out to other communities and look for what's working for them. And I'm going to use an example of a community in northwestern Pennsylvania. It's Cainborough. Some of you might be familiar with it. They have done a lot of innovative initiatives in their community. They have a lot of private partners that are coming, that have grew up there, moved away, came back, brought their money, and are creating a lot of added value in their community. They're asking the community and their partners what they're doing. And so looking at those best practices that other communities are doing, and then bring it back and see if it's feasible in your community and if it has a high impact. And then, what's the plan? And why do we take the time to do this? Because it gives us better alignment with our community. It gives us more accountability, and I don't know how many of you have people calling and asking why you do what you do, what about this program, why didn't you fix this thing? And so with this initiative, we can really help show the community what we're doing in a more all cards on the table way. It will also enhance public trust because they'll see what you're doing. And it's data driven, which I think is really important instead of being fueled by good intentions. So results-based accountability will make your planning and your budget strategy not just a list of expenses, but a really creative way to care for the community.
Okay, I know that it's the end of the day, and some of you are yawning. Was anyone paying attention to the last question that Lisa asked? She had 5 questions. Can anyone throw out what they were? Or at least the last one?
What's the plan?
What's the plan? Thank you. When I took office as commissioner in 2016, there was no plan. It just felt like we were directionless. It seemed like every work session was an update from a bunch of department heads that were telling me what activities they were doing with no purpose to it, right? It was like they were justifying their jobs, not telling me what programs they were developing and why they were doing it. And so this is a picture of me. I was newly the chairman, given this government, which, you know, is this thing that's been passed down for hundreds of years, right? And comes with a lot of flaws and a lot of great opportunities. And I thought, what I really need to do here is what I ended up calling a strategic action plan, SAP, right? We just talked about RBA, now we're on to SAP. And the SAP is a strategic action plan. I looked back on this Warren County General Plan, the comp plan from like the 1960s. They're totally ridiculous, right? Have you ever seen one of these? In Warren County, there was like 3 resorts, 4-lane highways everywhere, the population of, I don't know, 4 times what it is today. That did not happen. And that's kind of why planning sort of fell off the map and why strategic planning became a thing. This is a Google word search that I did on planning, strategy, strategic tactics, etc. And you'll see that in the 60s, there was this big boom of planning. Planning was the new thing. There were all these planners, right? And they came up with these harebrained ideas. And I think that there was this pushback, and you see planning was used less and less. In like the 80s, Michael Porter and some other Harvard people started pushing this idea of strategic planning because they were saying planning as we know it is not actionable. Whereas strategic planning, the idea was to say, if you do strategic planning, it will be actionable. The thing is, now it's a cliche. If I asked you what strategy is, I'd get 50 different answers in this room. And so I'm going to try to define it real quick, first of all. But my emphasis is really on the action part of it. Strategy in the original language, like in Greek, actually had to do with generalship. And so if you think of generalship, you've got a battle going on before you, right? You have limited resources, you're trying to maximize your resources to defeat the enemy. And isn't that what almost all of our programs do? Even potholes, right? You're fighting the weather, I guess. But everything that we do is fighting some sort of social ill, some sort of problem. And you have limited resources that you're trying to overcome. So you are a general. If you are implementing strategy, you are a general over the resources that have been entrusted to you. And so Michael Porter defined strategy as competitive position or adding value, which is highly relevant when you're thinking about your community versus any of the other communities, right? What is your competitive advantage? That's what strategy is. And then leaning into what makes you unique compared to those around you. How do you create value? How do you differentiate yourself from the other communities? I have a little orchard, about 80 trees, and it's always hard for me in the springtime when I go to prune. It's easy to cut off bad limbs, right? You've got water spouts that are going straight up, they're not going to produce any cut. You got a broken limb, go ahead and cut that. But then I come down to, I've got two perfectly good branches. The thing is, the tree doesn't have the resources to make really good fruit unless I cut off one of the good options. And so strategy has a lot to do with cutting off even what seem like good opportunities, good ideas, because you have limited resources. Another definition you might use would be like a lever or an analogy. Strategy is like maximizing your force against something that is weaker. That's what Rummel calls it. This is not a picture I think of the actual fire was at, but when I was at EMA, there was this big forest fire, like 500 acres or something, which in Pennsylvania, it's kind of rare. This poor young lieutenant was the one that was technically in charge. So me and my EMA guys roll up, and he was like focused on the fire that was right in front of him, missing the fact that the whole forest fire was heading towards a house. And so we were like, hey buddy, I know that EMA can't just come in and tell you what to do, but we really need to see the forest for the trees in this scenario, right? And so strategy has a lot to do with forest for the trees. My definition of strategic planning is Goal Plus method. It's maximizing the strength applied to the most promising opportunity. Here's where rubber meets the road. And how am I doing on time?
It's
4:28. Okay, we're not doing too bad. Vision is the way you want the world to be. So if I'm the American Cancer Society, the way I want the world to be is a world where there's no cancer, right? If I am Archibald Burrow, then it's probably going to be something like, I want an economically flourishing downtown where people are safe and happy, or something like that, right? I don't know exactly what it would be for your community, but that's the way you want the world to be. But guess what? The Chamber also has the same vision, as does the Redevelopment Authority and every other entity that works in your community, right? They all are achieving one and treating the same vision. So what makes it unique? That's where the mission comes in. Your mission is unique to you. Then you have programs or objectives. Usually when it's more time-bound, it's objectives, but let's say you have programs such as, pothole filling that work towards that vision, right? Street cleaning is a program that works towards that vision, right? Then strategies are what? Goal plus method. So you need to identify the goal, and then tasks would be like, literally sending the guy out with a street sweeper, right? I tend to put it on a pyramid like this, and in order to get to a place where you actually understand what your vision is, your mission is, your goals and objectives and programs and such, I recommend that you go through these 12 steps. First is getting a good facilitator. It is probably not somebody that is on your board, it's probably not you. It's probably best to get somebody outside that can facilitate and is used to facilitating strategic action planning. And then you need to make sure that all the right people are at the table. All the stakeholders that could kibosh your whole plan are actually involved. I have definitely suffered from that. I have excluded people that I thought were going to be disruptive, and it has ended up causing more problems in the end. So just invite those stakeholders from the beginning. That facilitator needs to set the tone, set the rules of engagement, encourage people to be open, but also not disrupt the meeting and such. They need to define what the goal is of the action planning. You need to do a good introspection where you look at yourself and understand your own strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You also need to do extrospection where you look at the communities around you and understand them and how you differentiate from them. Then comes the goal setting, and then you pick from those goals, that's the strategic part. Plan specific actions to bring those goals about, implement them, reevaluate them, and then something that I always forgot, but Lisa is really good at reminding me to do, celebrate the wins before you just continuously improve and go back and start creating more. Real quick, this is something we're going to reference a couple times, but it's actually not in your handout. If you want to identify what your current programs are, list all the people that you have in your organization, identify the activities that they do, assign a goal to it, and then that will tell you what your programs are. What you will find when you do this is that you'll probably have programs or activities that do not align with the mission of the organization or the vision. Or you'll find that there's big gaping holes of, I can't bring that mission about because there's a program missing, or because there's key activities missing, or because there's people missing. So doing this exercise is a really good visual way of seeing where your gaps are, and also where excess might be. So I looked at Denver, Colorado real quick. Their vision is a safe, clean, and welcoming community. And the specific government mission to bring that about is to empower its communities to live better, longer, by providing opportunities that support well-being and improve services. And I just threw in some fun programs. You know, the first one's a hit, right? Some place like Denver, Colorado is going to be, I don't know, 100 programs or something. So there's your programs. And then down here, you probably can't see them, but I have April Showers and Robin Banks and Brock Lee and Art Deco. These are my fictitious, funny, humorous people that do activities that bring those programs to life. So that's like a visual representation of one of the big things you can do on a whiteboard to make it really obvious what you're doing. Real quick, two quick stories. First of all, Mike Tyson says everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. You're going to come up with a good plan. You're going to go to a public meeting, and that guy that's coming to mind right now is going to be there. I don't know who it is in your community. I have a few names in my mind that's going to berate you, that's going to poo-poo it, that's going to try to knock you off center. If your plan's good, stick with the plan, even though you get punched in the mouth. And I'm not sure that this is true, but I've been told that Cortez and others would land their troops on an invasionary force, and they would burn their ships, as if to say to their troops, there is no going back, there's only going through. So you've got to win. If your strategic plan doesn't feel like you're risking a lot, like you're burning the ships, then it's not a strategic plan. It's got to hurt a little bit. Like there's got to be motivation, I guess. When we quit our jobs, well, I didn't run again, and Lisa quit. We started to feel that pressure, right? Our business was almost a hobby before that. I mean, it was more than a hobby. But it wasn't until like, oh, we have to feed our families now, right? That kind of pressure that actually makes you work really hard and be strategic. That's the kind of thing that you need to inculcate in your organization. All right, with that, we've now hit on RBA, SAP. We're going to move on to PBB.
I also am keeping in mind that it is the last chat that you have to have today, and you're already thinking about where you're going to eat and what you're going to do next and how much money you're going to blow, and show you your priorities. Priority-based budgeting makes it more intentional. So I want you to know that this handout was created by Chelsea Puff, who is a rock star in our organization, but she created this based on the ICMA handouts that I received when I was going through their certification program. So I wanted you to know where the information came from. And this quote, I love quotes. If everything is a priority, then nothing is. Priority-based budgeting forces us to choose and to choose wisely. So across the country, local governments are being asked to do more with less, and I'm sure you guys are too, and to do it with more transparency, more accountability, and better alignment with what the community wants. But at the same time, traditional budgeting methods where we look at those line items, we see what happened in the past 3 to 5 years, we add 10% for inflation, and we move on with it, don't actually tell a good story. So priority-based budgeting will help you clarify what you want in your services and programs. It'll help you align with your spending decisions. And it will make those hard trade-offs more transparent and thoughtful, and then you can communicate them better. And my example is Youngsville Borough. When I was the manager there, we had to eliminate our recycling program. But we didn't do it like this. We just decided that we couldn't afford it because the cost had gone up so much, and we didn't ask the community if it was important to them. So you know how that turned out. So I wish I knew about this back then. But it'll also help you shift from being in a reactive place to a more proactive stance in your community, which will be really wonderful for your staff. They're not constantly putting out fires. They're really happy to be in that more reactive or proactive position. ICMA describes priority-based budgeting as a way to move beyond crisis-based decisions and instead create a sustainable financial strategy that reflects community needs, engages the internal teams, and earns public trust. And that's what we all want. So this workbook is your hands-on tool for understanding and applying priority-based budgeting, and it will help you just walk through the steps. I'm gonna walk through the steps with you briefly, and Ben's gonna give you an use AI to help you with it as well. So through this, we're gonna define your services and programs, not just as line items. We're gonna link those programs to your community goals, and then we're gonna score them and evaluate them based on impact, and we're gonna use the data to make informed budget choices. And then we're gonna communicate that with our elected officials and the residents. If you are sitting here asking yourself, what do we really get for what we spend? And if your budget doesn't communicate your goals, and if you're looking for a better way to explain your spending and your services, then you're ready for a priority-based budgeting.
I have a question. This
Yeah.
has been really bugging me since it started. After speaking to a lot of these people here the last 2 days, basically we're small municipalities with a big police budget. And there isn't a whole lot left to meet goals. With older board members, commissioners, councilmen, women that don't like change. I came into this township growing up here, came back 30 years later, now I'm running it. And they still don't want change. And I came in and said, well, we gotta change or we're not gonna survive. But that's a challenge as administrators and the people who put those budgets together, is that we're limited. We put this great plan together, and we could take this and put this great, enormous strategic plan together. And then we go behind, in front of 5 guys who have not a flipping clue what I'm talking about, and say, well, we can't get rid of that. Well, no, we've been doing that for 50 years. Or no, we can't change that. The residents go crazy. Our challenge is for me, it's a wall we hit. Every year we just hit this wall.
What's your name?
What's my name?
Yes. Candy? Can anyone else relate to candy? Are you all struggling with the same thing?
Sure.
Yeah.
Elected officials suck. Sorry.
It's not
I
that
was
they,
gonna say that.
it's not that they suck, but 9 out of 10 won't listen. We sit there all year, we deal with paying the bills, we figure out how to save money here, we do this, we do that, we try to put capital improvements together, capital improvement plans, capital reserve plans, fix our aging township buildings, fix our sewer plans, fix our public works guys, you know, and we can put all this together, and I'm really curious to do this little test, but we face those challenges. And I know you being a commissioner at that point, you faced other people who had blinders on. You saw vision, you saw it all. But no matter what some of us do, we bust our ass every year to put this balanced budget together. Not robbing from Peter to pay Paul, or to put this plan together, to take care of our our people there forever.
Candy, thank you for bringing that to us. I think one of the ways priority-based budgeting helps is because it engages everyone. It's not just the board, it's not just the staff, but it's also the community. And when those board members hear from the community what's really important to them, they have no choice but to act. So I think that's the element that needs to be added, because in a lot of communities, you're sitting there creating the budget and taking it to them. They don't have any input, and that's what this will give you.
I just want to add one quick thing from a former elected official's perspective. Change, it's way easier to not change anything. If you're heading down the slippery slope, it's easier to say, it's not my fault, I didn't get us on that slope, than it is to take real risk and try to get out of it. It's just the easier path. And if you care about re-election or being liked or not being harassed in Walmart, then you just don't change, right? Two things. Lisa's absolutely right about communicate, and get people engaged from the public, because then the elected officials will have to act, right? Go ahead and plant people there, by the way, because they need to hear that. But the other thing is, don't just expect people that come to the public meetings to be the ones that you get their, like, don't just get those people's opinions, because that is a very skewed minority of people. It's one of the reasons that I actually dislike the current state of Sunshine Act and public affairs and such. Because, frankly, who do you get to come to the public meeting but the cranky old guy down the road that's complaining about his pothole, and the person's voice that's not being heard is the single mom with 3 kids that could not possibly get away at 7:30 p.m. on a Monday evening, right? And so you've got to solicit people's opinions that are not at those public meetings, and somehow get their voices in front of the elected officials. That could mean a survey. It could literally mean like a game of telephone. Like, really, you've got to maybe be creative. I don't know your community, right? But there are people that are not being represented, and their voices are not being represented. So it's a campaign. It really is. Once you figure out what the highest priority is, you've got to communicate. And then second of all, metrics. It's a lot easier when we're just looking at a budget to say, well, we're just going to keep level funding it the way it's always been. But if you come and say, hey, I looked at this program, and only 3 people use it. Or this road, you're going to dump a bunch of money into this road, and it's a road to nowhere. I know it's going to be painful, but literally we have 5 people drive on it a day. Meanwhile, over here, I need this street sweeper because, we can't get this community event or something because everything's sloppy. Or I need to replace the sidewalk because it's a safety hazard. When we're talking about real metrics, it's a lot easier to justify. Like, give it to us on a silver platter. They need the talking point written in front of them so that when they go to make a vote that you're encouraging them to do, they look good, frankly. Okay.
I just want to add to that, we're working in a community right now that really wants us to fight blight, and they want us to do better with enforcement, and they want to really take care of those vacant properties and things in the community. They're a community of 8,000 people about to consolidate with another community, and they'll become a community of 20,000, and they have one code enforcement officer. He can barely get through a couple streets in a year, more or less, go out and do the whole town. So when we start talking to them about this, and this is one of their highest priorities, then they realize that they have to put more resources to that. Now, I was gonna walk through this with you a little bit, but you have it in front of you. It gives you the step-by-step. And so I'm not gonna do that because I don't want you to miss out on Ben's little AI exercise, okay?
Okay, I need you all to think of 3 programs based on our definition that your community does. Again, it could be street sweeping, whatever. I would like to hear from you as to what your programs are going to be. And what I want to know, Lisa and I gave a talk at the County Commissioners Association back in May on using artificial intelligence in, was it budgeting or finance? I forget which. What we found in our research is that 3/4 of everybody outside of government uses AI on a weekly basis, I believe. It's like on a daily basis in the business. Government, it's less than 1/4. So I want to know from you, who has used AI in the last week for their job? Yeah, that's pretty proportionate. Okay. So ChatGPT, you've probably heard of OpenAI's system, is free, first of all. And they just launched version 5, which is, I've been so incredibly impressed by it. The other day, one of our clients and I were messing around. He wanted to add data centers into their zoning ordinance. Uploaded the current zoning ordinance, said something about data centers. I want to include this. It gave a flawless ordinance, ready to go. Send it to the solicitor, no problems. It's in motion. That's just one of many, many ways in which you can use AI. And what I want to do, since so many of you have not even used AI before, is pull up I'm going to pull up ChatGPT 5 and ask it a few questions. Is there any of this that we should go over? Yeah,
If
okay.
you have questions, you can ask or call me. I'm happy to talk about it anytime.
All right. I'll use my mouse over here to switch over. So, have you all thought of 3 programs? Alright, so ChatGPT, you just go to chatgpt.com, right? And you have to sign up, but once you're in, you can just start asking it questions from take a picture of a funny rash on your arm, and it'll tell you what it is, to really complex stuff. You can build what's called a GPT, so I did that here. What I did was I uploaded our presentation and some other resources, and said, I want you to help me build a priority-based budget using these parameters. So you can kind of train it. You don't have to do that, that's more complicated. You can always contact us and we can help with something like that. But there's some really cool stuff. I can upload a balance sheet and the P&L for a year and ask it to run some basic, let me cipher it for just a second. I hear in most communities, people would say something to the effect of, I give the elected officials the financials and they don't understand it, and they don't ask questions and they don't care. That's part of the problem, right? They don't get it. First of all, because financial literacy, particularly in fund accounting, is not common among elected officials, right? You have to make it easy. And part of one of the ways that you can make that easier is running those financial reports through something like ChatGPT, so it can run like a debt to fund asset ratio or something like that makes sense to them. And then you can say, look, my cash balance, I only have 3 months of cash balance, right? That matters to them way more than, that's in English. They can understand that, right? Translate it into dumb, okay? All right, and ChatGPT can help you do that. So what I'm gonna do is, I'll turn on, you can just type normally. Oh, I can't read it, let's see it at all. You can type, and it'll give you really nice formulated answers. Or you can actually turn on the audio thing and just talk to it. And so, who wants to be my guinea pig don't know who's gonna get Upper Chichester, so I'm not gonna pick on you. Archibald again? Okay, let's try that. Alright. Hey ChatGPT, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, so let's get started.
Alright,
Great.
I am the borough manager of Archibald Borough in Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania. Have you heard of me?
Absolutely, nice to meet you. Archibald over in Lackawanna County is definitely on the map. And since you're the borough manager, that's perfect. We can jump right into the whole priority-based budgeting chat. Basically, I'll ask you a few things about what you want to focus on in Archibald, and we'll shape the budget around that. Whenever you're ready, we can dive in.
Okay, what's the first thing you need to know? Are you still there?
Awesome. So let's kick it off. Usually I'd start by asking what your top priorities are for the community. For example, are you looking to put more emphasis on infrastructure, public safety, maybe parks and recreation, or something else entirely? Once I know that, we can start shaping how the budget might reflect those goals.
I've got one that we're trying to do stormwater remediation by tubing ditches. You got it.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense, especially if you're dealing with drainage or flooding issues. So we can definitely treat stormwater remediation as a big priority line item. From there, we can think about how much of the budget you'd want to allocate to that versus other priorities. So just let me know if you have a rough idea of how high that sits on your list, and we can kind of work from there.
I don't know what the ranking is going to be just yet. We haven't rank ordered them, but here's another one. We need to upgrade our wastewater treatment piping.
Absolutely, that makes perfect sense. So it sounds like stormwater remediation and then upgrading the wastewater treatment plant are going to be kind of top tier priorities. And that's a great place to start, because once we know those are at the top of the list, we can figure out how to budget for them first and then see what funds are left for other things. So yeah, let's treat those as top priorities and then we'll build from there.
Another priority will be that our nonprofit library is folding, and we'd like to continue the service as a sort of department of the local government.
Absolutely, that's another great piece of the puzzle. Supporting your library and keeping it running is definitely a community benefit, and it makes total sense to slot that in as one of the priorities as well. So now we've got a nice little stack. Stormwater, wastewater treatment plant upgrades, and making sure the library keeps its doors open. Once we kind of line these up, we can figure out how to carve out the budget so everything gets its fair share.
All right, what's next? You can ask me a question.
Sure thing. Let's do that. So out of those priorities we just talked about, do you have a sense of which one you want to allocate the most funding to right off the bat? Like, is stormwater the big chunk, or do you think you'd want to kind of evenly split it among the top three? That'll help me get a feel for how you'd like to balance it out.
The Borough Council has already voted and ranked the library number 1, wastewater number 2, and stormwater number 3.
Perfect. That definitely clarifies things. So we'll put the library as your top funding priority, then the wastewater upgrades, and then the stormwater remediation after that. Now that we know the order, we can start thinking about how to shape the actual numbers around that priority list. So thanks for laying that out.
Is this not really cool? I have to go for now, but we'll pick this back up
Absolutely.
tomorrow.
You got it. So now that we have our marching orders, I can definitely help you figure out how to slot those budget numbers in line with that ranking. We'll keep the library at the top of the list, and then work our way down through wastewater and stormwater. And from there, we can just make sure everything lines up with what you've got in mind. So let's do it.
All right. This has also all been transcribed, and so it's right here if you ever want to review it again. And if you actually type it, it'll give much more formulated answers, and it'll almost, like, you could say, build me a form that I need to take to my council, or build me a draft budget. You know what? I could actually do that.
We don't have time.
Okay.
Your time's up.
Anyway, you can upload quotes directly into the thing as attachments. It can start reasoning through it. load the thing up with as much information as you can. You have to double check everything, but I'm telling you, as a management consultant, you don't need me. You can use ChatGPT.
I want you to tell them that when you created this, that you can make it private. So one of the things we worry about is our data getting out into the universe, and so when you create a GPT, you can make it private, and so your organization could use it internally, and it doesn't have to go out into the universe, but you're training your internal based on your internal information. If you put it into the universe, then you're training the AI with your information, and it will be out there to be used. So I just wanted to remind you of that.
Questions?
Yeah, any questions?
What steps do you have to take to make sure it's private and not public?
Get a paid account. It's $20 a month